Last week, the poker world woke up to something rare, a public accusation between two of its most respected players. Dylan Linde, a three-time WSOP bracelet winner with over $15 million in tournament cashes, took to X and opened with some of the most damaging words you can say about someone in professional poker, which is, "I deeply regret doing business with David Peters." For a community built on handshakes, gentlemen's agreements, and a quiet code of honor, this was more than just a post. Linde is no casual player. He is considered one of the most technically gifted tournament specialists on the circuit. David Peters, on the other hand, is a titan of the high roller world, a WSOP bracelet winner who sits at roughly 14 on the all-time money list with nearly $50 million in live tournament cashes on the Hendon Mob. The roots of this dispute go back to the summer of 2025. According to Linde's detailed post on X, David Peters bought a piece of Linde's action in the $50,000 PLO event at the WSOP, the very tournament Linde ended up winning for over $2.1 million. Peters received his share of that windfall in cash shortly after that result. The trouble began a few months later. At the Triton Poker event in Jeju, Peters approached Linde again and bought into two of his tournaments, the No Limit Hold'em main event and the PLO main event. David asked if he could settle the financial accounts after the Triton event, claiming he was short on liquidity at the time, and Linde, trusting him, agreed. Both of Linde's tournaments resulted in losses, and David owed Linde approximately $50,000 as his share of the losing proposition. Peters and Linde reportedly agreed that the debt would be paid at the Poker Masters. Peters did not show up. The next time they spoke, Peters promised to pay at the NAPT. He did not pay there either. Month after month, event after event, the debt remained unpaid, a pattern of broken promises and missed timelines that Linde described in his viral thread in striking detail. Eventually, February comes and Linde is paid $12,000, and he was convinced to give Peters yet another month. On April 1st, Linde is paid another $15,000 and was told he cannot pay the remaining balance, which was about $23,000. Dylan Linde had had enough and went public. The post went viral almost immediately. Some expressed shock that a player of Peters' stature with nearly $50 million in earnings could be unable to pay back $23,000. Others were more understanding, pointing to the complex financial realities of professional tournament poker. 2 days after Linde went public, David Peters broke his silence. In a 4-part thread on X, Peters did something that many did not expect. He did not deny the debt, and he did not make any excuses. Instead, he opened by saying he deeply regrets the choices that he made that led to Linde not trusting he would be paid. He acknowledged that Linde posting about it must not have been an easy decision and took full responsibility for letting the situation reach that point. "I got myself into a bad situation where I just kept doubling down and making things worse while having very poor communication and missed timelines." There seemed to be some confusion around the wording from the original post when I sent the last payment on April 1st. I was telling him that I was working on settling the rest ASAP and not that I wouldn't or couldn't pay the rest. I was always going to make him whole whether there was a Twitter post or not, and we'll have this taken care of soon. He did not offer any specific repayment timeline, but said his focus was on making things right and trying to gain the trust of the community. Dylan's tweet did not just call out Peters. They inadvertently ripped the lid off a conversation the poker world has been having behind closed doors for years. The question was, how much of the staggering sums on the Hendon Mob leaderboards actually translate into real, spendable money? Mike Matusow had argued last year that high roller tournament earnings are largely a mirage and fake, that most of the top players are primarily on backers' money and their own net profit is a fraction of what their Hendon Mob profiles suggest. Daniel Negreanu had echoed similar sentiments in the past, saying that in 1999, if you traveled the world playing high-stakes tournaments, you could not spend more than $250,000. In 2025, you need to cash for at least $12 million to turn a profit if you play all the Triton, WSOP, and other high rollers. What you envision at the highest stakes is mostly a mirage. No one playing these rates is to have an ROI of over $5 million in any given year. Profitable years will happen, but they're anomalies rather than the norm. The Peters situation appeared, at least on the surface, to give those arguments some ammunition. The most striking piece of supporting context for this debate came from Stephen Chidwick with over $76 million in live tournament cashes. During a Reddit Q&A session, Chidwick shocked fans when he admitted that his actual profits were somewhere in the $5 to $10 million range, a figure far below what many had assumed. This is not a criticism of Chidwick. It's an eye-opener about the economics of the game itself. Seth Davis, who has $45 million in live cashes himself, pushed back on the narrative in a separate interview, noting that most serious high roller regulars he knows retains about 50% of their own action, not the tiny slices Matusow implied. Both Josh Arya and Sean Deeb spoke up in defense of the broader high roller community. Sean Deeb speculated that Peters' financial difficulties were likely not the result of being a bad poker player, but of struggles in other areas. Josh Arya was more pointed, taking offense at fans using the Peters situation as supposed proof that all tournament players are secretly broke and living hand to mouth. He wrote, "I can almost guarantee that David Peters' struggling isn't from his inability to be profitable at poker, and more to do with gambling/investing. This distinction matters enormously. There is a difference between being profitable at poker and being financially irresponsible in life. Both are damaging to a person's reputation, but they tell very different stories about what is actually happening with Peters and about what the Hendon Mob leaderboard actually means." This story also illuminates a deeper structural issue in professional poker: the informal, trust-based nature of staking deals. These agreements are almost never formalized in legal contracts. They are handshakes and gentlemen's agreements in a world where millions of dollars change hands between people who have known each other for years. It works until it doesn't. I have done a story about the Jungleman vs. Viffer debt-paying saga, which is a perfect example. Check link in description. David Peters' legacy is genuinely complicated by this episode. Before April 2026, he was regarded as one of the most accomplished tournament players in the history of the game. He did not have any controversy, and yet, here he is, unable or unwilling to pay back $23,000 to a peer he has worked with while sitting near the top of the all-time money list. For anyone watching poker from outside, this is a reminder that the glittering world of high rollers has its own very human financial pressure and failure.